The nation is mourning the death of civil rights trailblazer Jesse Jackson. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Renee Chu.
And I'm Chris Lovingood. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Reverend Jackson took up the mantle following the death of Martin Luther King Jr. And Jackson is credited with paving the way for former President Barack Obama to run for and ultimately be elected as commander-in-chief.
In 1988, Reverend Jackson announced one of his presidential runs right here in North Carolina. Destiny Patterson joins us live with more on Jackson's connections to the Tar Heel state. Destiny.
There are many connections to North Carolina and even some right here in Raleigh. We're standing in the area of the old Civic Center. This is where Reverend Jesse Jackson spoke back in 1987. We have video of that speech. Take a look here. This is a speech where he announced his candidacy for the 1988 Democratic nomination for president. And that was one of two runs for that nomination. Take a listen to some of the things that he said during that speech.
On this day, October 10th, 1987, in Raleigh, North Carolina, I officially announced my candidacy to seek the nomination of the Democratic Party for the office of President of the United States of America.
Just such a strong speaker there. You can hear the conviction in his voice and the excitement from the crowd. The civil rights activist and A&T graduate was born in Greenville, South Carolina, and he rose to prominence alongside Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Now, he worked to improve economic conditions of Black communities, and he helped pave the way for a more progressive Democratic Party. Destiny Patterson, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
And I'm Laura Levine here in the WRAL Live Center, where we have been monitoring those tributes pouring in all morning long. In the last hour, Governor Josh Stein posting on social media, civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson found a home at North Carolina A&T, where he launched his prolific career working to change this country for the better. And with that in mind, also North Carolina A&T this noon sharing this statement stating North Carolina A&T University students, faculty, staff, and more deeply mourn the passing of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Our hearts, thoughts, and prayers go out to the Jackson family. And of course, we know that he is a South Carolina. He was born in South Carolina. The governor there, Henry McMaster, he says that at the appropriate time, I will direct the flags over the Capitol to be lowered to honor his legacy and memory. So of course, we're going to continue to monitor some of the reaction here on the late Reverend Jesse Jackson.
And this is just part of our coverage, right? You can learn more about Reverend Jesse Jackson's legacy, local connections, and historic speeches on WRAL.com. There you'll also find statements from the people who knew and worked with the civil rights leader, and you can find additional stories on WRAL's YouTube channel.
Happening now here in the WRAL Live Center, we continue to track that reaction from the death of civil rights leader Jesse Jackson with an official statement coming from Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated here. It details the life and legacy of Reverend Jackson. It says that Jackson was initiated into Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated in 1960 at the Pi Psi chapter at North Carolina A&T. Over the decades that followed, he became one of the most influential civil rights leaders of the modern era, emerging as a defining voice for justice, equality, and opportunity in the years after the assassination of Dr. King. Of course, this is just one of many different responses and tributes that we're seeing here this morning. Public celebrations as well as observances are planned in Chicago as well. We'll continue to track that too.
So it doesn't look like you can see some evidence markers, but we'll keep looking in that situation. Well, we are talking about the nation remembering the life and legacy of civil rights activist Reverend Jesse Jackson. The Baptist minister and two-time presidential candidate passed away at 84.
Jackson graduated from North Carolina A&T University in 1964, where he became involved in civil rights. He joined the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Jackson was standing by King's side in Memphis when he was gunned down in 1968. His activism spanned decades, including two runs for the Democratic presidential nomination in the years 1984 and 88. This morning, Reverend Al Sharpton reflected on the passing of his close friend and mentor, encouraging activists today to defend the civil rights gains that Jackson fought for.
His job was as difficult as the job that preceded him, is to keep the Voting Rights Act in, because every 5 to 6 years you had to reenact it. It is now under threat. To keep some of the wins of the civil rights movement of the 60s was to maintain it in the 70s and 80s and 90s. That was as difficult as it was to get in the first place, and he was the one that was out front doing that.
Very much. He was the face of the civil rights movement. Jackson was admitted to a hospital in November. He had been living for years with progressive supranuclear palsy and Parkinson's. Jackson was 84 years old.
And here in the WRAL Live Center, we know the civil rights world is reacting to this news, but also politicians across the country, including former President Joe Biden. He posted this on X, stating, "Throughout our decades of friendship and partnership, I've known Reverend Jackson as history will remember him, a man of God and of the people." Also, if you missed it this morning, President Trump posting the Reverend Jesse Jackson is dead at 84. "I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smart." So, of course, here in the Live Center, we're going to continue to track some of the condolences and memories being shared all over social media.
And our coverage of Reverend Jesse Jackson continues over on WRAL.com and our YouTube channel. You can learn more about Reverend Jesse Jackson's legacy, local connections, and historic speeches on WRAL.com. And there you'll also find statements from the people who knew and worked with the civil rights leader.